We have a very special guest on the Dino podcast today. She's a stand-up comedian. I've gotten to know her through her very funny content on Instagram and TikTok. And what has really resonated about following her online has been her stories and comedy and how they explore the first generation and immigrant experience in America, a topic very near and dear to my heart. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Reem Edan. Reem, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
This episode is brought to you by Little Saints, the mushroom-powered spirits and cocktails that you drink instead of alcohol. Do you want to consume beverages in a fun social setting, but you're tired of alcohol ruining your day? The hangovers, the next day regret? Try Little Saints cocktails instead. They're powered by functional mushrooms like reishi and lion's mane, long used in Eastern medicine for their calming effects on the nervous system. No, they're not psychedelics and they won't get you high, but these cocktails do give a light, take the edge off euphoric feeling that I find very nice in social settings. Plus, they're alcohol-free, sugar-free, and have only 5 calories per serving. So unlike alcoholic cocktails, Little Saints is actually good for your body. Try your favorite cocktail flavor today, including Negroni, Spicy Marg, or Paloma. You can order these on littlesaints.com. And best of all, you can save 20% by using the discount code DINO20. That's littlesaints.com, discount code DINO20. Personally, I really love the product. There's some great people behind it. I think you'll enjoy it too. So go order yours today. Reem, let's start with your childhood. Where is your family from and where did you yourself grow up?
Okay, so my parents are both Iraqi, both from Baghdad. And I was born and raised in the United States in a town called Fort Collins in Colorado. So for those of you who don't know, Colorado is like a very mountainous state, right in like the center of the United States.
And Fort Collins, I've spent some time near there. I lived in Boulder for a few years.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. 3 good years in Boulder, maybe like 2016 and 2019.
Nice. What were you doing there?
I randomly took a job after business school. I thought I would go back to New York, but got the right opportunity doing private equity investing.
Yeah. Okay, shmoney. Okay. Casual private equity drop. Oh, okay.
Got to make that paper.
Make the paper. Nice. Did you like Boulder?
I loved it. It was totally different from my own upbringing in New York, which was big city. And then Boulder was like this healthy outdoor lifestyle. I really liked it a lot.
It's funny because everyone goes to Colorado because they love like hiking and outdoor activities. And I feel like my family was not a Colorado family. Like we had like picnics once in a while in the mountains, but we weren't like whitewater rafting and snowboarding and doing all the things that all my counterparts in school were doing. So looking back at it now, I'm like, oh, why did we live in Colorado? It's so random.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Growing up, were there any aspects of the immigrant household that stood out to you as particularly funny or traumatic? Or we can go in either direction.
Funny and traumatic are one and the same. It's interesting because I was astutely aware that we were Iraqi and Arab, but I didn't feel that much different from everyone else in terms of like if you were to talk about racism and stuff, I didn't feel that at all growing up. I knew I was different, like I said, but it was kind of at that point, pre 9/11, it was kind of just it's like being Iraqi was just a different kind of Mexican. It didn't really matter. And I remember too, my parents would teach us about Iraq and show us pictures, and I was very aware of it. But then I really kind of came into my own with my Iraqi-American identity, once I started doing stand-up, because that's when I started looking back at the funny / traumatic moments of realizing I was different, or how that played out with war and politics and stuff. And so when I started doing stand-up is when I started actually realizing, oh wait, being Iraqi played a bigger part in my life than I realized it growing up. But yeah, I mean, like you have like the run of the mill things, like being one of the only Muslims in school, and like everyone else would have Christmas off, but we wouldn't get Eid off. And I was like, why not? And so we'd get Eid off. My parents would just like call us out sick. They're like, oh, religious reasons. So I remember that being different, like having like different holidays. What else was so unique about it? Just
Were
like,
your
oh, sorry.
were your parents strict when you were growing up?
I mean, my parents are pretty liberal on the Arab spectrum, but they were stricter than they were now. So there were like no sleepovers. And I cried. I tried. I cried and I tried. I was like, but oh, it's all women there. Their dad's out of town. And they're like, nope, just like no sleepovers. Um, and like we were a little bit more modest of clothing. Like we still wore shorts and stuff, but like some styles were like too short or things like that. So it's like I remember being aware, like, oh, like I could never do cheerleading because their outfits are like way too revealing. But at the same time, would wear like tank tops and stuff. So it was like this. It wasn't too much in one way or the other, but it was at least like when I was a kid, it felt like something I had to like adhere to at all times.
Mm, mm. Yeah, my own childhood was like definitely stricter than parenting than my peers, and there was like some pressure coming as an immigrant from Bosnia and Herzegovina, like where my mom was like, "No, you have to go study math and science. You have to succeed." Yeah. Like, so I.
Would
I
your
don't know,
parents also not let you wear shorts and bikinis? Were they off limits for you?
But bikinis were off limits. But no, I'm just joking.
They were off limits for us, but I was a fat kid, so I wasn't trying to wear a bikini anyway. I was like, no, that's good to know. Yeah, my body type is this way for Islam.
I mean, at what point in your childhood did you start to develop this feeling of like, dang, I'm kind of funny. Like I've got a good sense of humor.
Yeah. I asked my dad this the other day because we were talking about how soon you can tell a kid has like a kid's personality, and he was like instantly. So I was always making fun of things and joking around and being silly. I think like I think I really like came into it when I was like in elementary school, probably like around like the fifth grade. I remember in the third grade, I was like, we were doing some kind of like a award ceremony in class. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, okay, when I go to receive my award, I'm gonna trip on purpose. And then everybody will laugh and they'll think I'm funny, and then I'll be the class clown and it'll be awesome. So I feel like it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to be the class clown and be the funny girl. Especially, and I've talked about this before, like especially like being like an overweight kid. And not necessarily like growing into my looks until way later in life. I always found comedy to be the one thing that like put my personality forward and like earned me friends and attention. Whereas other people might get that just right off the bat for being like super cute or super girly or whatever it was. So I was very aware of comedy and its power or its social power at least. And then, but I really feel like I came into my own with comedy, like, and started thinking of myself as like the funny girl in high school. In fact, I think I was on this thing called video announcements, where it was basically like a way to share news about the school to the school. And it was like a school of like a couple thousand. So if you were in a specific class in video announcements, you got to like film videos of yourself with like actual like camcorders and videotapes. And then you would put on basically skits or sketches and find a way to announce information to the school, and then it would be broadcast for everyone. So that's really when I started like being a content creator before it was like a content creator. And deciding like, all right, I'm cool being the funny girl. This is dope.
All right. So funny girl, and especially ramping up in high school. What about after college? Did you go into comedy right away?
No. Okay. So first of all, I never knew I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I didn't realize this was a job. And I should say too, so we moved around as a kid. Like we were born in the United States, and then in 2001 we moved to Bahrain, which is a small island in the Middle East. And then 4 years later we moved back to the United States. And the reason I say I came into my funny in high school was because like there was a stint in between where we almost moved back to the US and then like didn't, and then moved back to the Middle East and then moved back to the United States the next year. It's very confusing. But the first time we moved back, the test time, I was not popular. I was actually kind of a loser, and I remember like it was so hard to make friends, and I just like was just hanging out with a crowd that like wasn't even my kind of people, but I just like couldn't make friends. And then, like I said, we went back to the Middle East, and then we moved back to the United States a year later. And this time around, I made like again, this like conscious decision. I was like, okay, so obviously it's hard to make friends in the United States. So I'm just going to be outgoing and funny and use my comedy and my charm to meet people and get them to like me. And so that's really when it started taking off, was when I decided like, okay, people like these kind of people. I'm going to use it to my advantage, which is, if you think about it, the dorkiest thing ever. So anyway, when I went to college, before I went to college, I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to be a new person. What am I going to do? And I told myself, I was like, maybe I'll try an open mic because I'm like so hilarious. And I just never did. I studied marketing. I always knew I wanted to work in entertainment, but like I said, I didn't know I wanted to be a performer, or at least I wouldn't admit to myself, because in our culture, it's kind of like, it's frowned upon to be an actor or a performer. So my whole intention was to work in entertainment. And the way I did that was work in marketing and find my way to work at movie studios in marketing departments. So I went from being like the funny girl in school to the funny girl at the office, which was like interesting because I got closer to my dream of being in Hollywood. I mean, I was technically in Hollywood, working, like I said, at movie studios, but it still took a little bit of massaging to like admit, like, actually, I want to be like on the other side of the camera, and then maybe try out comedy and et cetera, et cetera. So that's
What
how I got
was
there.
what was the first step in terms of like an open mic or just getting on stage in some way?
Okay, so I did the Hollywood thing, right? I worked at like Disney, I worked at Paramount, worked at another studio. And for a while it was great because on the outside I was like, oh my God, I'm going to movie premieres and I'm like meeting cool people and there's like A-list actors here. And so for a while that kind of satiated that need I had to be in and around Hollywood. Then eventually I kind of hit a wall and I realized like, wait, actually I'm not fulfilled at all because, this is the idea I had, like what success meant to me. Success at that time meant to me working in a movie studio, living in LA or New York, being skinny. And at that point, I had moved to LA, so I got really skinny. And so I reached all the goals that I had. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm here. I'm at the finish line. Now what? And that's when I realized, like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. So it took me kind of reaching a very low point in my life to actually start doing some soul searching. And that's when I was casually, I was like in meditation classes and stuff where they encourage you to think about these things. And I was like, okay, well, what makes me happy? Because obviously I'm not happy. What gives me joy? And I wasn't trying to find a new job. I was just asking myself these questions to like go do something that makes me happy, whether that's hiking or I don't know, traveling or whatever. And I was like, well, at a fundamental level, I love making people laugh. I deeply love it. Like in a friend group situation, in any situation, it brings me joy. So I was like, okay, well, if I like making people laugh, I always said I wanted to do an open mic. Why don't I just do that? Maybe that'll give me something to work towards, for fun. And that was kind of the catalyst. So I got together with a friend who's still my really good friend today, and he's also my funny friend. So we're like, hey, let's set a deadline for ourselves. Let's go to an open mic by the deadline, and then we would just get together, like get brunch, hang out, and just like write comedy together. And eventually, the deadline came. The day of the deadline came. I'll never forget because the deadline was third week of February 2016, and I made it till the last day of that week. And I like looked online and I found the last mic available, which was like 10 p.m. in like downtown LA. It was so sketchy. And I was like, well, I got to do it. I got to make the deadline. And I went and then changed my life.
It changed your life. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. And now that you've been at stand up for a while, like what goes into developing one of your sets? Like, how do you take something from the inspiration you get from your upbringing or what's happening in media to the craft of making it ready to perform on stage?
It's funny because it's so chaotic that I wish I could be like, this is how you do it. There's no one way and it evolves constantly. But for me, sometimes you know, when you go to a party and you have like certain stories that you always tell, right? Like, you know, you just have like your catalog of the funniest, best, craziest stories. That's kind of what stand-up comedy comes from. That's one part of it where you look back and go like, okay, what are the things, what are either the stories I tell or the types of stories I tell? That's something to like put in your bag. And then like you also look at, sometimes you'll think of a punchline randomly. It has nothing to do with the story, but you'll be like, oh, that's funny. Or like a metaphor or a symbol or something, and you like kind of put that in your bag. And then sometimes you look at like stories from your childhood and you go like, wasn't that crazy how this happened to me and it doesn't happen to anybody else? You put that in your bag. Then you sometimes will like be thinking about things philosophically, like why is it that we like, you know, put this and this together and that's normal, but we don't do this and this? Why is that weird? You put that in your bag. And then you shake that bag up and then you hope to God stand-up comedy comes out, which is honestly like the best way I can describe it. Because even now I'm trying to write a new hour and I'm like, where do I start? I have like thousands of ideas, but then it comes down to like, okay, well, I want to tell the story, but I can't just tell the story. I have to have observations. So like, what are some observations I have from real life? And you have to like kind of weave it together. It's a very psychotic tapestry.
How much of the workload is that initial inspiration of finding things in the bag versus then the fine tuning, finding the observations, trying it with audiences?
Yeah. Well, a lot of comics will tell you that it's a lot of comics don't actually write comedy. They write on stage, meaning like they don't sit down and like write a joke out. They will just like talk on stage until something sticks, and then they'll like use that over and over again. So it's kind of it's a diverse and convoluted process. And sometimes I'll like think of something on stage and or like in the moment and I'll just flow. And then later on I'll write that down. So it really just like it just depends. It depends. But fine tuning, and this is a common misconception, like people think that you just do new stand up every show, which is honestly the sign of a newer comedian. Because if you are more veteran, you know that like you got to say a joke a lot for even if it works and kills on the first try. By the 25th try, it's you know exactly when to pause, and you'll maybe even realize like years later, I realized that this punchline actually works for this joke, not that joke. So it's a continual process. Yeah, it never ends.
But how much of the job of a comedian nowadays is that online content creation part of it?
Oh, 50%. I mean, yeah, that's the problem is it never ends. That's you keep thinking to yourself. I thought to myself, I was like, once I hit 100,000 followers, it's over. Nope. Now I feel like 100,000 followers is nothing. And now I'm like, I got to hit 1 million. It's, it's crazy because they go so hand in hand, right? Like I started out as a stand-up and the whole goal with stand-up comedy is to tour and sell tickets and be able to do your art for bigger audiences. But then it's like, well, how do you reach those audiences? Unless you're on a TV show immediately, then, it's hard to like let people know who you are. So, and these days they cast TV shows from social media. So they're revolving doors and they're so intertwined that like one depends on the other, in my opinion. There are comics who are, touring and living their lives solely off of their stand-up comedy, and they don't have a strong social media presence, but even they are like working towards it. So yeah, in my opinion, you have to have both, and and they both pay. So it's like sometimes when I'm not touring, I'm doing branded content work that'll pay, or if that's not happening, I'm doing writing work that'll pay. So you wear a lot of hats, and you have to like be open to one of them feeding the other.
On that note, this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Little Saints.
That's great.
It's the
that was a great lead-in.
Are you tired of alcohol hangovers?
Wait, tell me about Little Saint. I want to know what it is.
Okay, Little Saints is a startup based here in Miami. I gotten to know the founders, and they're amazing. And it's a functional beverage company that it has all the same flavors as like your favorite alcoholic cocktail. So I'm drinking the Negroni right now. But instead of alcohol, it uses functional mushrooms like reishi.
Like adaptogenics?
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, they're not psychedelic mushrooms, but they're mushrooms that have been used in Eastern medicine for calming the nerves and then giving you like a low euphoric buzz. My sponsor's going to absolutely love this, Reem.
I'm interested in that. I like that kind of stuff.
Well, look, Reem, if you'd like to go on their website, you can get 20% off with the discount code
Oh,
Dino20.
Dino20. Okay, I will write that down.
Listeners, Dino20 on littlesaints.com.
That's awesome.
This was not planned, by the way. I appreciate the support.
I'm genuinely interested. I'm like, oh.
I love it. Reem, but then you got into comedy. What was the leap from to leaving your day job? And how did your parents react to the pursuit first when did it seem like a hobby at first, and then like when you actually left your day job?
My dad recently was like, quit this hobby of yours. I was like, it's not a hobby. It's a whole cycle. It really is. It's crazy to think that I've been at this for like 8 years. Yeah, well, when I first started out, it was a hobby to them. Again, I wasn't trying to like quit immediately. I mean, deep down inside I was, but it wasn't like I was like, okay, this is it. Because a lot of this career takes the courage to admit that you want to pursue it, right? Because my biggest fear was like looking like an idiot online or in front of people, thinking that I could do it when like, what if I couldn't? So I started doing stand-up in 2016, and they were fine with it, but they were like iffy about it. They got very iffy about it when I posted a clip to YouTube and their friends found it and they're like, oh, what is your daughter saying? And I was like, okay. So there were a lot of conversations had, not even with me, with my siblings, to be like, hey, convince your sister to quit. This is enough of this, hobby already. But it just got worse from there. I was like, I can't quit. I've tasted the good life. I can't go back. So I left my day job in November of 2018. So my first open mic was in February of 2016, but I didn't really start stand-up till June. I just did one open mic and then started in June. So yeah, just two and a half years after I started, I quit my day job. 3, if you want to count, who cares? One of the two. But it's crazy because I really believe in synchronicity and serendipity. And I had been like, once I started doing stand-up, I like almost immediately started getting invited to do shows. Like I think my first year I did a show in London. The next year I did shows in Japan. Like I think I did some shows in Europe. I was like going all over, it wasn't like a headlining tour, but I was doing spots everywhere. And it was great. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty quick for someone at my experience level at the time. And all the while, like my coworkers were attending my shows, like people in my sphere were very, very supportive, which was awesome. Cause I feel like it was nice to like get to know people outside of being, an actor or a comedian. Cause sometimes those friends are like needy, or, you're just in different circles, but it was nice to like meet cool people at like different calibers and then become a comedian and actor. Cause I felt like I had a lot of support and interest. But yeah, I was like traveling so much for comedy that I was like, I ran out of PTO. And so I was talking to HR and I was like, okay, PTO, paid time off. So wait, if I just like don't get paid, can I take the time off? And they were like, yeah, I guess. And I was like, great, I'm going to Japan. So I was getting at the end. I was at the end of my rope for sure. A lot of people were like, you need to quit. What are you doing? Like you're wasting your time. I was like, I know, but I was scared because it's expensive to live in LA. And I was like, health insurance, I don't know how this works. So I finally, in October of 2018, I resolved to quit. I was like, okay, this is going to happen. I told my coworker, I was like, okay, it's Thursday today. Monday, I'm quitting. Hold me accountable. And she's like, okay, I'll hold you accountable. I was like, great. I go to work the next day.
I'm getting nervous just listening to this. Isn't it? It's an immigrant child.
I know.
I'm nervous.
So yeah, Thursday, I said I was going to quit on Monday, right? And then I go into work on Friday and I got laid off and they gave me 4 months of severance. I was like, oh my God, right? Tell me that's not God working in amazing ways. So
that's serendipity. And then can you school me? What was the other word? Synchronicity? Synchronicity.
Yeah. Synchronicity. Read a book. What does that mean? Just kidding.
Damn, cook
me. You're chugging mushrooms over here. I'm just kidding.
I'm not that spiritual. I'm not spiritual enough for synchronicity.
Okay. Synchronicity, it's like when things are synchronized. It's like when you make an effort or an intention to do something and then suddenly things line up. That's synchronicity.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect.
I read it. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so that's when I actually left my day job. So I was like, oh my God. So I had a nice little kick, little boost from the universe. And 2019 just started touring. So yeah. So had a
Uh,
good full year of touring, doing college shows, which is where I make, a lot of my money. And then 2020 happened and, just kind of I had 1 year.
COVID.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, so
So,
is that when you leaned into the Instagram content?
that is actually good for you. Yes, that is when I became a content creator
Yeah.
because yeah, 2020 happened and I was like, oh my God, my tour got canceled, all the shows got canceled. Um, in fact, if you talk to a lot of comedians and you ask them how long they've been doing stand up, some of them will take off 2020 and 2021 because we didn't really all get to do a lot of shows. Um, so like they won't count them. But yeah, 2020, I ended up moving. My sister and I moved back to Colorado to just hang out with our parents because LA was a shit show. So we were in Colorado for like just under a year. And in that time, I was like, well, I guess I'll just start making TikToks. That's when I started my TikTok, started like posting. I think my first TikTok was like me dancing, wearing gloves and a mask or something. And that kind of started taking off. And yeah, so I have the pandemic to thank for my content creator career.
My first TikTok was something like, "Let's talk about the debt crisis." You know that.
Nice, nice, nice. We get it. Private equity. Ooh, no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Didn't take off.
Dino
But
has money.
no,
Just kidding.
I do all right. I do all right. No.
Dino has little saints money. Oh. I'm just
That
kidding.
sweet, sweet, delicious little saints money.
I'm just kidding.
That money will be better, listener, if you use the discount code Dino20 and get 20% off your order with little saints.
Use the code.
But you had to take some time off with COVID, but you were getting into stand up, and then eventually you came back. Getting on stage, you mentioned it was a vehicle in some ways to explore your own identity a little more consciously. How did your like your identity and your background start to manifest in terms of the characters you create, or talk about on stage or in your content? Because I'll say, like, I love your Instagram reels that are about like the Arab auntie that you deal with.
Oh yeah.
But then there's also the other side of your personality and upbringing that's like, it's festival season and White Claws. Like that. How do you explore those two worlds?
Oh God. I think about this all the time because I'm like, my followers are so confused. There are some people who follow me from like Baghdad and they're like, this whore, what is she doing? I don't, where are her clothes? What happened to no bikinis? Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because this is something I toy with a lot, because on stage, at least up until this point, I have talked a lot about my identity, and probably because I started in 2016 and that's the year Trump got elected. So whereas I started out thinking I would not really talk about that stuff, I couldn't help but do it because of the atmosphere, that we were in, with the whole Muslim ban and just like, things happening. So I was like, okay, so not that I like played into it. I just that it was something I wanted to talk about. And especially the more I tried to suppress it, the more it came out, the more I was like, I'm just going to talk about living in Colorado. And then came the part where I was like, well, I can't talk about living in Colorado without talking about the fact that my parents are desert people and suddenly had snow and like didn't buy us the right boots for snow and like just like things like that. So I don't know. It's continual because now I think about my audience and who I'm making content for, and I'm making content for me. I'm doing things that I think are funny, and some days it's this, and some days it's Burning Man. So yeah, I kind of just like take it as it goes. But these are conversations and thoughts I'm actually starting to have with myself. It's like, okay, like should I be focusing on that part because obviously there's a market for it and people want to hear it, or should I just kind of, be honest and acknowledge that there are so many different parts of my identity. And, even being Arab plays into me going to Burning Man, because like everyone there is wearing like keffiyehs and shmals, but they don't realize that it's white people's thing. They're just like, oh, it's so good for the heat. I'm like, I know, we made it. So
very practical.
yeah, it's very practical. It's interesting. Actually,
Yeah.
it's worth noting that like, and I'm going to Burning Man, which is my favorite festival. I'm going next week, and it's worth noting that it was at Burning Man that I had decided to one pursue stand-up comedy as a career. It was a very, it's an environment where you're at a festival away from cell phones and society and everything for 7 days. So you really have time to like think about who you are or just like, play and experiment and realize different things about yourself. So that was cool that I realized that there. But I also think it's worth mentioning that like people at Burning Man would ask me where I was from. And I went by myself that year. First year, I went to a festival by myself. It's crazy to be in your 20s. And people would ask me like, oh, it's like, where are you from? And it was the first time in my life that I didn't know how to answer that question, because normally I would say, oh, like, I live in California, or like, oh, I'm from Colorado, or like, and for the first time, I felt like this need to tell people like, oh, I'm Iraqi, but I live in LA. And I think that was a huge defining moment in my self-perception, where I was like, why do I keep trying to tell people this? This is interesting. And that's when that's when it just like naturally flowed out in my comedy. And so that kind of plays into what I was saying earlier. It's like, okay, I'm trying to make a conscious decision about what to share with people. But now I'm like, several years into my career, and now I'm a different person, or I have different things that are naturally floating to the top. And it may not be about being first generation, but that's still kind of colored in the background, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I want to pull on this thread a little more about this exploration of your identity. A quick detour. Can I get your quick take on some economic news?
Oh, sure.
Swear.
What did Kamala do now?
No. I saw a tweet yesterday that said this is the first time in years that Burning Man was not sold out. Do you think it's an indicator we might be starting a recession, that people's pocketbooks are hurting?
No, it's because it rained last year and it was terrible.
Were you there? Were you in that disaster zone?
Yes, Dina, I was there. I was like, this is World War III. I've experienced it. I was there. It was first year. I mean, it was the first year they said in like 20 something years that it's ever rained at Burning Man. And the last time it rained there, it wasn't that bad. That was terrible. We got stuck there. Our RV got stuck in the mud. It was, so I understand. Even I considered not going back. And it's my favorite event of the year. So I was like, I'm going to risk it. I need to go. So maybe it is that. Maybe it is economic downturn. Maybe inflation definitely hit in LA. I'll tell you that. I don't know. I think it mostly has to do with the fact that last year was very traumatic for a lot of people.
The fair, but I'll take the other side of this. Listeners, mark my words. Within 3 months, we will announce a recession, and I'm calling it because of the Burning Man leading indicator.
That's your. I like that.
Do you know? I've never been to Burning Man. I've done Coachella a few times. I feel like
nice.
I'm probably ready to graduate to Burning Man, but when the whole fire festival disaster happened, I remember my twin brother was watching the documentary, and he said like, no one feels bad for these rich kids stuck in that disaster zone. He's like, but I just keep thinking that could have been Dino. That could have been Dino.
I know. I remember thinking that too with Fire Fest. I was like, okay, the influencers they didn't get to eat. But now that I am an influencer, I'm like, oh my God, they must be hungry.
Now that I am in the disaster zone.
Yeah, exactly. But dude, it could impact anybody. Also, Burning Man, it's like I joke that Burning Man is where rich people go to cosplay as poor people, because I think that's basically what it is. Everyone's out there like, I can live here by myself. But there's people from all walks of life, all economic statuses. Like, there's kids there. There's like elderly people there. It's very diverse. Not racially. I think it's like only 10% racially diverse or something like that. Something crazy. But I mean, I'm there, so it's diverse. But yeah, it's very. The natural disasters affect everybody.
You're carrying a lot of weight in that 10%.
Yeah. I have the diversity. Let's all join up.
Speaking of your identity, When you explore, now we're swerving the car back on the road. This was like a
Oh,
detour into economics.
okay.
But like when you explore some aspects of your background on stage, let's say in the American heartland, like how has the reception been? Has it like mostly been all positive? Are they confused? What's that reaction been from the
Yeah.
crowd?
Um, well, I perform all over, like all over. And it's mostly positive. I think because of things like TikTok, I think there is more of an appetite and an understanding for diverse perspectives, whether it's my personal Arab Muslim identity or, a Chinese American identity. I think people are more eager and interested to learn about other things and have a more uh, general level understanding of things. Like I feel like 10 years ago, when you talked about Ramadan and Eid and different things like that, I feel like people kind of knew what it was, but didn't really, have more information. And now that we have TikTok and stuff, I think it's very like widely, it's wide, it's spread so much. And I think it's more, just like in the cultural fabric, or just like there's a general understanding of
Mm.
it, which makes it easier for me to joke about it because I can't joke about Ramadan if you don't really know what Ramadan is. But if you do, then it's like, oh, okay, we have a point of connection, and then you can go forward. But yeah, I feel like most of the time, I'd say 98% of the time, it's very positive. No, 100% of the time, it's positive. Um, but I recently have been thinking about uh, giving people more explanations about things because I kind of just assume, oh, if I tell you I'm Muslim, I don't eat pork, and that we're religious. Um, but I think people are eager to like learn more, so I think that's my responsibility as a comedian to kind of like take a second, explain more, and also like remind people that they can laugh about these things because I feel like you're brought up not to a lot, or like they don't want to be offensive and like laugh at the wrong thing. So that's something I have to uh, be better at. But other than that, it's been good.
That's really heartening to hear. And I mean, I remember growing up, there weren't that many Arab Americans in media. Uh, like I myself, I'm not sure if you know this, Reem, but like I am a secular Muslim as well.
Oh, I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
guessed. You said Bosnia, and I was like, I don't know that word. I know
yeah.
what y'all do. I know what flavor that is.
But I remember like the atmosphere, especially after 9/11 for a couple of years, like it was pretty hostile to
Yeah,
Muslims, Arabs broadly. Like the media did not depict them in the best light. So I think it's really heartening to see more like Arab Americans with their own TV shows, more in media and
yeah.
stand up. So thank you for your service, Reem.
Oh my God. Oh, thank you for thanking me. Oh my God, my service. Oh, I'll let my parents know. People are thanking me for my service, just so you know,
You're
for my
broadening,
hobby.
you're broadening horizons.
So
I really
I'm
think
trying,
that.
I'm trying. Ironically, I feel like I get the most hate from like Arabs. I mean, this is just like on social media and stuff, but like, because I'm not a dirty comic, but I'm edgy and in a respectful way. But I like to like toe the line and like see and explore things, especially as somebody who's Arab American. I think it gives me a much different perspective. And I feel like sometimes my videos will reach just like the wrong people in some village in like the Middle East, and they're like, "You are what whore? You are what you are saying? She is eating pork." I'm like, "I'm not eating what? Like, I'm not." They're just crazy. So I feel like audiences over here are more generally accepting, but there are people here and there.
Yeah, so sometimes the algorithm sends it to the right place. I guess.
Hmm.
Hmm. Amazing. So now that you're several years into this journey into comedy, like, have you, how are you enjoying it? Like, are you finding that fulfillment? Like, have you chosen the right calling with
Oh,
this
100%.
profession?
100%. I'm so happy I'm here. I'm so like grateful and happy that I'm here. I can't, even if I wanted to quit today, I couldn't. Like there's no other route for me, and I'm sure this career path will evolve, right? Like I'd like to get into like, film and TV and like, but those are all different expressions of the same art form. And I just can't. I was like, my parents are proud of me and like, they're supportive and they make cameos in my videos and stuff like that. So they're on board, but then they still have their moments where they like, they go back and they're like, what are you doing? I just want you to have a real job. I'm like, this is a real job. Um, but yeah, I was even telling my dad, I was like, there is no other option, like, sure, I could do things to make a little bit more money here and there until something big pops off, but like, this is it. And I find myself so grateful and lucky to have not only like found this, like I said, it took a lot of soul searching to like find what was there all along and just admit it. And like, I know not a lot of people have something like this. So it's great to say that like, I'm living my dream. Do you know what I mean? I love that part.
Beautiful. Mashallah, mashallah.
Thank you.
I got you.
Nice.
Well, Reem, I think we can leave it there for the career journey part of the chat. I like to end most interviews on something I like to call the bodega corner. It's an homage. Yeah. It's a little homage to my upbringing in New York City. And people in New York City are known for having strong opinions, some hot takes. And I asked all the guests to give me something they want to clap it up for that they're really positive on, and then something they want to give an F out of here to. And we can take turns. We can rotate.
Do you know what I think is stupid? People who say that they are empaths. Okay, listen. Have you heard about this? Okay, an empath is somebody who like it's a very LA New Age thing. And I can make fun of it because I am LA and New Age and I meditate. So I can make fun of these people. But empaths, they're just like, yeah, they just like feel other people's emotions. So like, oh, if somebody's feeling a thing, they pick it up. Their energy is just like, oh, they feel it. It hurts them. It affects them. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. You're reading emotions. What are you reading eyebrows? Like, oh, she's surprised. I can sense it. Like, no, you could see it. What are you talking about? I think they're dumb.
Reem, I consider myself an empath.
No, you don't. You're just a conscious individual. You're just good at like reading the room. That doesn't mean that you can feel my feelings from the bathroom. No, that's not real.
I'm sensing some distress, Reem.
Yeah, I'm like, are you picking up on this? Are you picking up on this?
Getting some signals. All right, so that's perfect. I just need you to package that and wrap it up with a F out of here.
A positive thing?
No. You got to say fuck out of here or F out of here.
It's a fuck out of here, empath.
Fuck out of here.
Fuck out of here. What's your fucking feelings?
My F out of here is to...
Wait, are you not going to say the real word? I said the real word.
Okay. My fuck out of here to corny shock jock podcast in Miami. There are
funny.
There are a million podcasts here. And the other day, it was a few weeks ago, I was walking home in Wynwood. I was coming back from the bar from watching my beautiful Venezuela Vino Tintos lose to the Gringos of Canada and Copa America. Nice. A few beers in. And then I see a camera crew on the streets, lights, everything. And I'm like, what's happening? It's like 1 a.m. What is this for? I see there's a podcaster standing there with a sign that says, hot women are useless, prove me wrong. And then trying to provoke people. And I'm like, listen, I would love to debate this. I'm a little too buzzed right now to have an intelligent debate, but that's just so funny. Corny. Yeah, and it's a very Miami thing. Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I can see that.
Right,
I held up a sign. I was at the Republican. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Tell me.
I was just going to say, fuck out of here.
Yeah, fuck out of here. Your fucking signs. I went to the Republican National Convention and just to do street interviews, and everyone kept thinking I was AOC. And I was like, so I held up a sign that said I'm not AOC. It was fun.
Wait, I'm gonna have to talk to the person who booked this interview. Actually, I thought we were getting.
I was like, what?
All right, and clap it. Is there anything you want to clap it up for, Reem?
Yeah, like promote or support. What do I love?
Yeah, what do you love?
I would like to clap it up for frozen yogurt. I think frozen yogurt is the most underrated food group. It is delicious. It is nutritious. You can have it on a diet. It is available everywhere. And soft serve is so much better than ice cream. That's it. I love froyo.
Clap it up for froyo. All right.
I love it so much.
Oh, amazing.
Truly,
Well,
I just want to get rich enough to like buy a frozen yogurt machine and like have it in my house. Can you imagine? Just for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh,
what are the big froyo brands out there? I feel like they got to sponsor you after this. Clap it
oh,
up.
you're right. I would love to be sponsored by Yogurtland. Yogurtland, if you're listening, I love them.
Yogurtland.
I love all yogurt.
Yeah, can we get a Reem 20 discount code going, and then if you're
Let's
listening, set it up. All right.
Yeah.
Clap it up for froyo. I'll give a very quick clap it up to something super cliche, but I got to do it. European summers. I just spent 2 weeks in
Wonderful.
Italy with a little bit of Spain, and it's just beautiful. I mean, the sun, the sea, the olive oil, the wine. I'm a big believer in there's beauty everywhere in the world, but the Mediterranean is objectively the best place in the world.
I agree.
In my
I
opinion,
love it. Yeah.
So
I love summering in Europe. That's the vibe.
clap it up for summering in Europe.
I did summer in Europe this year, so.
Oh yeah, where'd you go?
I went to Portugal and England and Italy and Paris.
Right. You did a European comedy.
I did a little tour.
Right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. Not in Italy, but yes, I did tour. And Ireland. Yes.
How were the crowds in Europe compared to the crowds here?
Oh, fantastic. They're great. You just have to adjust little words here and there that they don't know. Like they don't know the word eggplant. You have to say aubergine. But the crowds were great. But I will say, I did not get a full summer experience in Europe because apparently it's cold in Europe in June, and in London it's always cold, and so in the UK and in Ireland it's always cold. So I was like, I'm sorry, what part of summer is this? I'm very confused. Like I had to leave. Only Italy and Lisbon and parts of London felt like summer.
Oh darn.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's too cold in June. I guess it was a little too hot in late July, early August. A little too hot.
Oh, jelly.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to stick the Goldilocks timing. But
yeah,
clap it up for your European summers. Reem, I think we're reaching the end of the interview here. As the last question, I want to ask, like, where can people listening go to hear your comedy, to support you, to follow you on socials?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is my favorite platform. It's where I like post my videos and my stories and things that are fun and off the cuff. So yeah, Reem Edan, ReemEdan, and then everywhere else too, but same handle.
Perfect. And lastly, are there any parting words of wisdom or advice you would give to someone who is in the same shoes you were a couple of years ago, where they like making people laugh, they like comedy, but they're not sure about taking the leap into making it their thing?
Yeah, I would say if you feel like it, if you have a curiosity or an inkling, just do it. Just go to an open mic, take a friend, go in like a small open mic, whatever feels more supportive or safe for you. But like, don't do what I did, which is wait. Like I wasted so many years before I finally admitted it. And I'm like, oh, if I started this sooner, it would have been so much better. So that's my advice: is just start today. Set a deadline and start.
Good advice. Well, Reem, I definitely think you found the right calling. Like I said, I've been a big fan of your online content for months. It's an honor to have you on the pod. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I'd say this was a big get for the pod. This is our biggest get since our sweet, delicious.
Oh my God. Me and the mushrooms. Oh my God. Well, it's an honor. Thank you.
The honor is all mine, Reem. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, let's be in touch.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week's episode. Thank you for tuning into the Dino podcast and for being a member of our community. On this show, I try to cover a wide range of subjects with our guests, from culture, arts, and music to history and foreign policy, all the way to business, technology, and current events. We're independent media, and we rely on your support to keep the show going. If you'd like to support the Dino podcast, please consider becoming a member for $5 a month. Your membership will give you access to premium content and exclusive episodes, and it will make you a real true fan, a Dino head. So consider supporting the show, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you for being part of the Dino podcast community.